Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be my wrap up for Evilathon, which was a horror themed readathon that Kasha from Kasha in Bookland created. And all the prompts were based on Stephen King works. For the most part, I did a pretty good job picking out books for myself. I read 7 books for just like in total, I guess, for this readathon. So I think I'm just going to go in order of the prompts and share my thoughts with you. So the first prompt was Carrie, read a horror book with red on the cover. So for this, I chose Violet by Scott Thomas. I rated this 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. So basically, this follows a woman whose husband has, recently died because he was in a car accident, and she and her daughter move into like her old childhood vacation home, and things are not going well. Basically, there's an evil lurking under the surface, I guess, in this lake town, and it talks about like an old friend waiting for our main character. So I think it's a psychological horror with like a very unreliable narrator. The beginning is very slow. So so I read this in one day, so a lot of the stuff that I think could affect your reading of it didn't really affect me just because I blew through it. The first half or so is definitely slower. So you read about them cleaning this house for a while. So, just be aware that there is definitely a slow start to this. But throughout this cleaning of the house process, there's definitely some things that start to be a little creepy, and I'm like, when I was reading it, I was like, just stop cleaning the house and get out, please. The creep factor definitely escalates as we go throughout this book. The daughter of our main character starts to play with an imaginary friend, and I will just leave it at that. We start to get a sense of the creepiness, and there's something clearly wrong with this town. I really loved it. I don't think it's going to be for everybody. I think given the choice between Violet and Kill Creek, I do prefer Kill Creek, but I loved both of them. I do highly recommend them if you're looking for a fast-paced horror. But like I said, I think some people may struggle to get into this one just because the beginning is slower. That being said, I mean, it was creepy. I was intrigued. I didn't love the main character all that much, but I didn't mind it just because I needed to know what all was happening. Yeah, it was a fun book for sure. So I think it's scary, but in a different way than Kill Creek. So the second prompt was Needful Things, read a book from your favorite horror genre. So my favorite horror genre involves some sort of sci-fi or disease element. So for this, I read The Night Parade by Ronald Malfi. So I picked this up based on Samantha from Missy May's Reading Nook. She had done this whole Vlogtober series of recommendation videos and mentioned this one, and I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. So basically, this is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi with disease, which is, the disease is Wanderer's Folly, and basically it's kind of like a dementia sort of thing, and people get trapped in their daydreams, essentially. It causes bleeding and some brain issues, we'll just say that. So we have 2 timelines in this book. We have there's a past and present. So the past, we start about 2 years before the present timeline. And I really liked this because the past kind of explores, it makes its way up to the present. We get to see how the disease causes basically the apocalypse. And yeah, so we learn more about the disease, we see its impacts, and then we learn more about the events that the main character, David, and his family go through. And then the present, David takes his daughter on the run because the CDC is basically after her because they think that she's maybe the cure to this disease. Ellie, the daughter, has abilities. So I will just leave it at that. I thought this was really fast-paced and enjoyable, but it's also surprisingly sad. But yeah, I was just really drawn into it. I wanted to know what had happened. I wanted to know more about this disease. I think it's fascinating to kind of follow the development of a disease and see how society breaks down. So this was an excellent book. I highly recommend it if you also enjoy, watching the apocalypse happen and sci-fi thrillers with disease. The third prompt was The Dead Zone, read a book about an undead creature or person. So for this, I chose The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. This is a fantasy horror novel, and it's YA. I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. We basically follow a main character who is a grave digger, and I think this is set in Wales, or something very much like Wales. But basically, there are these bone houses, which are people who, you know, have died, but like kind of become reanimated. There's another main character who shows up, and he's a map maker. The bone houses attack the town, and then they basically like go on a quest to stop them for good. And there is a bone goat companion, which was really awesome. So this I really enjoyed. I did think it was like a little predictable, and like maybe the writing was a little simplistic at times, but I thought it was really engaging. I read it super quickly. I think it had some very thoughtful and sad moments, and you know, it kind of makes you think about like, what would you do if your loved ones came back as a zombie type creature? But yeah, like it has a very fairy tale-esque quality to it. So if you're looking for a very fast-paced fantasy book with some horror elements, like I would definitely recommend this. I thought it was very, very fun. So the next prompt was Bag of Bones, read a horror, thriller, or thriller book about a murder or serial killer. So for this, I read An Unwanted Guest by Sherry LaPena. I rated, I think, 4 out of 5 stars. Basically, a group of people go to this inn and they get snowed in and lose power. People obviously start to die, so this is like definitely like a closed circle murder mystery type book. So, you know, throughout the book we're trying to determine, is one of the group members a murderer, or is there somebody else in the hotel? Ooh. So I thought this was, again, very fast-paced and engaging. I didn't actually guess the murderer, but I'm not the best at that sometimes, so I think like some of you may be able to figure out who did it. So yeah, everybody basically has some sort of secret, and not everyone is likable. But yeah, I thought this was an excellent closed circle murder mystery, and it's perfect for winter because it's, you know, very atmospheric. There's lots of snow. It's cold. Death is happening. But yeah, so this is like a 286-page book. I read it in, I think, less than 2 hours. So, you know, that gives you a good idea of how drawn in I was to the story. So I definitely want to check out more from this author. The next prompt was The Outsider, read a horror book outside your comfort zone. So for this, I read Come Closer by Sarah Gran, and I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. So I read this on my Kindle and got it through Prime Reading, and I think they still have it if you want to take advantage of that. But basically, this is a story about a woman being possessed, and that's all I'm going to say about it. It was a very quick read. I thought it was like really creepy, and there was a lot packed into such a short book. We have kind of like an unreliable / maybe a little unlikable main character. But yeah, it was fascinating. It didn't end like I expected it to. I'm trying to be vague, so like, you know, you can be surprised by what happens. But damn, there was a lot going on in it. I was for a short book I felt very satisfied with how everything happened, and I mean, the ending wasn't what I expected, but I'm okay with it. I picked this up based on a recommendation from Rachel at the Shades of Orange, and I'm glad that I did. I thought this was a really fun book. So prompt 6 was It, read a book that includes one of your biggest fears. So for this, I chose The Devil in the Deep, which is an anthology of horror stories about the sea, and this is edited by Ellen Detlow. I rated this 3 out of 5 stars. I don't think it's the best anthology I've ever read. Basically, I thought that it would involve the sea a little more, and okay, so some of the stories did involve basically, I went in assuming that this would involve a lot of weird sea creatures and killer mermaids and things like that. And some of them did, but not all of them. And some of them I had to really strain to see the connection with the sea. So some of the stories, for example, there's a story about a murder that happens. There's a story with a weird creature that releases a virus. That one was awesome. There's a story about a tattoo that draws people and animals into her obsessively. There was kind of a really creepy story about something that kind of had to do with the Selkie mythology, where they have skins that that transform them into their seal identities. Then there was Shauna McGuire had a story that was kind of reminded me about the Little Mermaid. But yeah, so some of the stories were really good and definitely sea-themed horror and what I was anticipating based on this collection. Others not so much. I mean, none of the stories are particularly long. liked some of them, but I don't think this is like a must-read anthology. So prompt 7 was The Shining, read a book about a haunted place. So for this, I chose Violet, and I've already talked about it, so I'm not going to talk about it again. For prompt 8, The Long Walk, read a book over 400 pages. So for this, I chose The Devil Aspect by Craig Russell. So I rated this 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. This was set in like 1935 in Czechoslovakia, and basically we follow a psychiatrist who gets a job at an asylum where the devil's six are held, and these people are like, you know, serial killers. And he wants to interview them to learn more about this, like, his hypothesis, which is like this shared evil thing, which is the devil aspect. And so throughout the book, there's interviews with these serial killers and you learn more about their crimes. But at the same time, we follow this storyline in Prague where this serial killer Leather Apron is like mimicking Jack the Ripper's murders. And so we're trying to solve these murders, and we follow a police captain as he does that. There's, like a hint of the supernatural, and I was really surprised by what happened. I thought I knew where it was going, and then I was like, oh, nope, no idea. Had no idea. So I thought this was excellent. I was really, again, drawn into this book and this world. Based on the timeline, we kind of get hints of Nazis, and it's very atmospheric in that it's kind of setting the stage for World War II and the Holocaust, and you can just feel the tensions building up, and just I don't know. So I think it did a really good job of portraying the time period that it took place in. I was fascinated by the serial killers in it, and the main character, and I don't know, just the characters were awesome. I was definitely surprised by it, and I would highly recommend picking this up. So prompt 9 was Dr. Sleep, read a whole book while in bed. So for this, I read Come Closer, which I've already talked about. And then finally, prompt 10 was Different Seasons, read a couple of short horror stories. And for this, I chose The Devil in the Deep, which again, I've already talked about. So for the most part, I only rated one of these books, The Devil in the Deep, 3 stars, but everything else was a 4 or 5 star read for me. So, I did an excellent job picking these out for myself. Aside from The Devil in the Deep, which, you can honestly skip out on, I definitely recommend picking up all of these if they sound interesting to you. They were all, I blew through all of these really quickly. I don't think it took me longer than 2 days to read any of them. I think there's some good selections here. So let me know in the comments below if you took part in Evilathon. Let me know if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. I hope you're having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.